One of the things about our show is it's going to be unique.
You are what you do. You can say any amount of things that you want to say, but what you do is what everybody sees.
People are like, "Oh, I'm just going to JV it." Like, it's just JV it. Like, what the hell does that mean?
I cannot tell you how excited I am to hang out with you guys today. So thank you so much.
Well, then that end buyer could come back and say, well, I didn't fully understand that it was subject to.
That's not a thing. Like, the SEC has thought of all of these things. They've been here since 1932.
And you can do what you want with your property.
Buyers have time, they have negotiating power, they have options.
Oh my gosh, I am blown away by your inexperience, and they've been in business 20 years.
And that includes things other people put on your property, right? It's your property, Leo, okay? Suddenly Cousin Jimmy's in a lawsuit.
A novation is replacing one contract or one obligation with another.
Out with the old, in with the new.
Yes.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Today, we're talking about multifamily conversions. I'm Andy Fowler, and I'm here with Sean St. Clair. If you're new to the show, make sure to give us a like, subscribe to our channel. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, now known as X. Make sure to go there, subscribe. We'd appreciate it. You can also download our podcast if you prefer to listen to an audio version. You can do that on Spotify, and you can do that on Apple Podcasts. We'd appreciate the follow. With that, we're going to go to Sean, who has our legal update.
Thank you, Andy. So my legal update today is focusing on structuring of your business. And in particular, structuring your business prior to your investing in real estate, investing in, another business, that type of thing. Basically, getting your business structure first before you launch your investment business. And so, unfortunately, a lot of times the cart is put before the horse on that. So I end up being brought in or consulted after somebody has already went and formed some LLCs, started using those LLCs to invest, and then they come to me and say, okay, I've done this, but I really now want a good structure. So what does that look like? What would you recommend as far as a structure? And we go through and we talk about, estate planning and asset planning and asset protection, and how to structure your real estate portfolio, how to structure your other business, your wholesale business, your fix and flip business, how to basically structure everything and what it looks like as far as, having different levels and holding companies, having a trust at the top for estate planning and probate avoidance. And we go through all that. And then they say, okay, well, now I want to basically convert all of my existing, LLCs that aren't structured that way, that weren't done properly, into this new structure. And sometimes that's a simple fix. It just costs more money to do it because it's more work on our end to have to kind of do some of the cleanup work. But other times, especially if I have a client that wants anonymity, and I've talked about this before on the show, I'm not a huge fan of anonymity, although I do think there's times where you want to have some level of anonymity in your structure. And if you do, once you've started, and if you started without putting that type of anonymity, in place, we can't keep the anonymity and start moving your assets and adding your existing assets into your new business structure without basically ruining that anonymity. So there's a lot of things that really you should think about before you run out and start investing. And mainly it's, how am I going to structure my, corporations, my LLCs, my organization, so that I can basically add properties, I can add LLCs in a very efficient and simple manner without having excess costs, without ruining what I'm trying to accomplish or set up. So my recommendation is, and it doesn't take much. It's really not, a lot of people think, oh, well, it's going to be 10,000, 20,000. No, I mean, a very basic structure is not going to cost even close to that. But get that basic structure in place And it's not really complicated, but put that in place with maybe a family trust at the top, a holding company. Maybe you want anonymity, so you make that holding company a Wyoming LLC, which has that level of anonymity. And then below that, have your different entities that you actually own property with or you operate with, and structure it that way. Basically, basic structure to get you started would be, having, say, a trust at the top, having a anonymous or a Wyoming LLC as a holding company, and then below that having maybe an Arizona LLC if you're doing business in Arizona or whatever state you're going to do business with. Have that below that holding company, and that's it. I mean, it's not really that complicated. It's not that expensive to put that type of structure in place, but just do that now. Don't just go down to your state Secretary of State or the Corporation Commission and start, forming LLCs and doing business without really knowing how you want this set up, how you want to be protected, how you want to be structured, because it's more difficult on the back end, if not impossible, to basically clean it up. So my recommendation is focus on your organizational structure before you start your investment business.
All right. Thank you, Sean. With that, let's go into a couple brief announcements. The Creative Finance Collective. Note and a reminder, we are now doing the Creative Finance Collective on Tuesday afternoons, every Tuesday. And today it will be Tuesday at 2:00 p.m. Arizona time. So if you're watching from another state, you'll adjust your time accordingly, but it's 2:00 Arizona time. What is the Creative Finance Collective? That is a group of attorneys and professionals in the space of creative finance that get together weekly to talk about what they're seeing in their space and their jurisdiction, new things that they're doing, new problems that they're running into, new laws that they might be dealing with, to help you, to help us as lawyers be better prepared to assist you in creative finance transactions should you need our assistance. But also, it provides a unique opportunity for you, the listener, to be involved, because we make ourselves available for the entirety of the hour. So for an hour, we're going to be talking about creative finance, but the entire show is open to questions to you, the listener. So if you want to have attorneys from Ohio, Texas, California, Arizona, Georgia, Alabama, and Florida, these are just examples of attorneys who have been or might regularly participate in the collective. These are attorneys that are available to you for that hour to discuss creative finance. So make sure to be a part of that. Again, it's 2 p.m. Arizona time. You can find it on YouTube, Facebook. You can find it on Twitter, now known as X. So make sure to be a part of that. Also, we're taking any questions that you may have in the final 15 minutes of the show. In order to post your questions, go ahead and post them in the chat wherever you're watching. We're keeping track of that. And as you think about the question, go ahead and put it in there. We're not going to forget about it. We'll get to it in the final 15 minutes, and that is how you can participate in the show today. With that, let's go ahead and get into our discussion today. We're talking about multifamily conversions, and with us to discuss that topic is our old friend, Andrew LeBaron. Andrew, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so Andrew, you're a fund manager, a real estate entrepreneur. You do a lot in the real estate space. Tell our listeners about yourself and what you're up to.
Have a lot of history in real estate, a little over a decade, been flipping homes from small single family to small multifamily, worked my way into the short-term rental portfolio game, built a company around short-term rental management, bought and sold many properties, hold a portfolio, and then jumped into a smaller motel deal, which transpired into two more, which transpired into two more. And it just kind of repeated itself over and over again. I saw an opportunity post-COVID to acquire hospitality assets in areas with a little higher populations and convert these assets into sustainable living. And that's what we do today.
So tell us about Iron Toro Capital. That's a slightly different part of what you do. Tell us a little bit about that.
Iron Toro Capital is my partnership with Jacob Amesqua, someone that I served a mission with 15 years ago, a while ago. That's our private money raising company. But we raise capital together with another individual known as Richard Wilson. He's the president of Family Office Club in Scottsdale. where he raises capital from private family offices, and together that's how we are able to form motel department conversions. Half of it's the money raising side, the other half is just the execution and construction side.
All right, so let's get into the topic. Our topic today is multifamily conversions, and because we know you've kind of made that a focus recently. So why don't we just start with the basics for the real estate investor that's looking at this, and it sounds interesting. Why don't we just go ahead and define it? What to you is a multifamily conversion?
There's so many different types. That's a great question. There's we got the office to residence multifamily conversion. We have really just basic shell commercial property to multifamily conversion. We selected a particular niche, hospitality, motels and hotels, because we liked the footprint. We liked the layout. We liked the fact that it wouldn't take a ton of surgery to come in and build a multifamily asset out of it. It's where we take one property, which in this case is a motel or hotel. For lack of better words, and to summarize it, we put kitchens inside the motel rooms, and we work with the municipality on rezoning if needed. And now we have a multifamily asset. I made that sound very simple. There's a lot of steps involved, but in essence, that's what we do.
Yeah, and we'll get into those other steps because we're curious to know exactly what goes into a project like that. But why multifamily over any other use? I mean, why do you think multifamily is where you want to be from an investment standpoint, as opposed to, there's probably 30 different uses of real estate, right? But you've chosen multifamily. What are the benefits of multifamily?
Great question. Multifamily is going to, according to just a lot of studies and how the economy is moving, it's going to be in a much greater demand going forward as inflation skyrockets, as we see home affordability drop. More and more folks are going to jump in and pour into the rental market, the rental economy. Rental economy is going to be the future. Fortunately and unfortunately, depending on how you want to look at that. It's also something I just know. I understand it. There's many other, I'm sure there's other ways to, make triple, quadruple, quintuple times what we earn on a yield. But we like multifamily. We understand it. We know it. We're experienced with it. And so are our partners. There's also more buyers for these types of assets. There's more private equity involvement with these types of assets. It's not totally, undiscovered.
So obviously you're in this realm and space to be profitable and stuff, but you mentioned the idea of inflation and increases in rent, and I mean in Arizona, many would argue we have an affordability crisis. Is there something fulfilling about creating spaces that people can live in and afford, and you're basically contributing or helping with that affordability issue? Is there some fulfillment in this as well?
Totally. Absolutely. And I want to highlight our product is not subsidized at all. We are market rate, but we are going to be a more affordable option compared to what we see out there. Our motel and hotel rooms are anywhere from 250 square feet to 500 square feet. They're pretty tight. They're not big. So we have to get creative on how we're going to build a habitation, how the city is going to give us allowances and permits and change of uses for these conversions. But yes, they are more affordable than the alternative.
Well, and when we talk about an affordability problem, one of the reasons for that is just availability, right? So it's just a process of adding supply to the market, right?
Right. Yeah. There's areas where occupancies are above 95% and they're just flooded, and there's lines out the door. People want a place to rent. They need a place to go. And when we open up, our projects are typically full pretty quickly.
So for your company and your model, for you guys, what's an ideal property for a multifamily conversion?
The one that gives us the best deal.
Okay.
Most of our projects, an ideal project would be a 1980s or newer, You said ideal, so we'll say one that's ready with kitchenettes in it, one that has fire suppression systems, fire sprinklers in it. In any area that we invest in, that's a requirement, fire code requirement. And we would like to have a property that has a decent layout, specifically external corridor, exterior corridor is what they call. So any time you go to a motel or hotel and you could see all the rooms from the parking lot, that's an exterior corridor. Interior corridors, like your Holiday Inn, you walk in, you go up the elevator, you go down the hallway, and that's funny enough the difference between a motel and a hotel. People wonder, what's the difference between a motel and a hotel? A hotel's nicer, and a motel's, shabbier. Well, one has that exterior kind of front face view where you can enter and you can see almost all the doors. The other one is more private.
Is there
And you
now
like
you
the
mentioned
exterior one. Oh,
Say it again.
sorry, Andy. You
No,
said
go
you
ahead, Sean.
like
Finish
the
your thought.
exterior ones. You like the exterior?
We do.
over interior.
We do.
Why?
A lot of tenant or resident behavior suggests that people like to have their own space. They don't necessarily want to walk through the least amount of common space that they can share with other people, the better. Typically, people just want to go straight to their unit, just like an apartment complex. If you can kind of imagine in your mind's eye what an apartment complex might look like, you're not walking through a ton of different common areas until you get to your space. And if there is common area, it's pretty open. Most people, for obvious safety reasons and privacy reasons, they don't want to walk through a tall or a long hallway to get to their unit. I know back east, that's very popular. You see, in New York or back east in New Jersey, you might see a lot of interior corridor apartments. It's very popular. You think of the show Friends, right? That type of living's kind of coming back. It's affordable. It's reasonable rents. It's got all the amenities that someone might need. But you asked ideal. We would prefer exterior corridor.
Now, does ideal include? We haven't asked this yet, but when we talk about the conversion, are we simply just talking about conversions to rentals, apartments, or could this be conversions to condominiums as well, or is that part of your investment strategy?
That's definitely a possibility. That's an exit strategy that we could take on. We've never done that before, and we know it's pretty popular. Again, back east, that's actually a very popular thing. The condo conversion strategy, repositioning. Again, a lot of municipality back and forth and zoning attorneys, but definitely a strategy. We've never done it before, though. We just like to keep these inside of our extended stay hospitality portfolio, or we will actually go to the city and convert them into multifamily, R3 zoned multifamily units.
So let's get into kind of the process and what this looks like from start to finish in a multifamily conversion. Take us through kind of the beginning, which is really coming up with the money for the deal. And maybe I'm wrong about that, by the way, because I certainly haven't done a multifamily conversion. Maybe the beginning isn't starting with the money. That's just kind of one of my assumptions. But how does that process start?
Yeah, like a great question. And this show is going to be just a little unique simply because, again, half of my business model is raising capital. The other half is the execution and the pipeline of deals, which, funny enough, are a lot easier than the raising capital part, especially in this economic environment. We'll go half and half here with that question. One half is the raising capital piece. We built a Regulation D 506C fund, which allows us to sell securities. And I got to be careful with what I say on here because I can't promote it. But we allow investors who are accredited to purchase shares, and they can jump into this fund. Okay, it's a 5-year exit fund, and in this fund there are certain parameters that allow us to use it as a vehicle to acquire these assets. What we offer in the fund is an 80-20 split, meaning investors that invest are going to get 80% of the upside, and we get 20% of the upside. There's going to be an 8% preferred return, meaning every single year, no matter what, even if there's no money made in year one, they're going to accumulate 8% of the total fund amount. That's an 8% preferred return. And there's a lot of other jargon as well inside the fund, which you guys are attorneys, so you might know. So that's one side of it. Yes, raising money before the deal comes around is preferred. It's ideal. It's the best. Not always possible. A lot of investors nowadays are hesitant about investing into funds. They want to wait for a deal to come about. So when you have a deal, it's a lot easier to raise that money. A lot easier. It's kind of a hard sell to say, hey, jump into my fund. We'll buy something when it becomes available. So the other side is the pipeline of deal acquisition. Most of these properties they're older, they're not performing. That's key. Okay, they're not performing. If they were performing, they would have been sold. They're not performing. The demographic of these hotel owners, they're very sharp, they're very savvy, and they're business owners. These are not your typical, sub 2 type deal where, people are in dire straits and they're going to give away their property. No, these are properties that are managed by business owners that are well connected. They have family, they have friends, they have associates. And if they can't handle it, if they can't take on the deal, they probably get help from someone else. So they're harder to find and source. But when we do, we usually make an offer very similar to what I've talked to before on your podcast, a seller finance offer, just because bank debt is terrible. And whatever we can't finance or whatever equity we have to bring to the table, we leverage our fund.
So it sounds like you're trying to stay away from conventional financing as much as humanly possible.
Bank financing banks don't like hospitality. That's rule number one. Banks don't like hospitality. After COVID, banks got really nervous about hospitality. Their LTVs went lower. Their underwriters are more skeptical. So, and here's what's worse. They don't like hospitality, and hearing that some idiot like me is going to convert the hospitality into multifamily. They're going to say, who is this guy? What's his track record? How many deals has he done? So on and so forth. And, we have some deals under our belt. No, we're not the most seasoned in the world, but we're also not brand new. But it's still very difficult. Even for seasoned operators, it is difficult. And typically with that comes a lot of different penalties. You have your exit penalty, right? You got your refinance penalty. And I say penalties, but they're just points. I call them penalties. But they charge extra fees, points. There's restrictions. And of course, just the debilitating interest rates, right?
So let's say you find a project and you at least have the funds to purchase. At that point, you go under contract, right? Assuming that you guys can come to terms. You enter into a contract, and then kind of what's the next steps? Do you actually close on the building before you do the zoning, or do you, extend out the due diligence period and make it conditioned upon entitlements, which is a legal term, right? But conditioned upon you guys doing the zoning and different things that need to be done to make sure you can really use this property in the way you intend.
Yeah, you're in the right realm of thought. So we submit an LOI for listeners. It's a letter of intent, and it's non-binding, as everyone knows. But if we're the only buyers for this company or for the seller, and typically that's what it is. It's us, maybe one other, maybe. But usually the distressed assets we target, we're kind of the only ones. We'll still submit an LOI. We'll treat that as a contract. And if we wanted to, we could we can create what's known as an option to purchase contract, which does bind the seller. It's an exclusive contract that allows us the option to buy it under a given time frame. So we can control the transaction without any skin in the game for us. In the event that it's a great deal, we have the funds, we know it, we understand it, we know the city, we've talked to the city, and we know we're ready to execute, then we'll go ahead and submit earnest money. We'll build a real contract. We'll have a due diligence period, which can be anywhere from 60 to 90 days. That's fast for these types of projects. And yeah, there are contingencies built in. For example, one of the things that we struggle with is submitting variances. And these variances have to be approved by the city. City planning and zoning commissioner or city attorney, they might struggle approving these variances. simply because they want 1.5 parking spaces per unit. And sorry, there's only 1 parking space per unit in this parking lot. I can't make more parking spaces. And we have to come up with creative solutions. One solution is, can we create a joint parking agreement with the next door neighbor? And then think about it, and they say, well, if we're going to do that, we're going to make you build a wall, which is going to be a sound barrier. It's got to be fireproof. So it has to be block. And just it could spiral out of control, honestly. And the bureaucracy of it all is just wild. What we've learned is just be amicable, take a deep breath, be patient, and let them know that we're here to improve the city. We're here to increase the city's sales tax dollars. We're here to create housing for its residents. And usually when you coin it that way, which is the truth, right? We're here to build housing for your
Right,
residences. They're usually really helpful, really amicable.
We had a show on
Have
this.
you found
Go ahead.
Have you found there to be a difference between the size of the municipality and the ability to, obtain that variance? As a big city, medium-sized city, or a suburb versus, say, a smaller town. What's been your experience on that?
Yeah, if you work with, for example, if you go to Phoenix, and I know you probably already know Rose Law Group, but if you use a zoning attorney and you use a firm, and they can shortcut your way into a connection or a letter of intent to the city to get it pushed, to get a application for rezoning submitted and approved and looked at and formed the right way, so that you can get notes back from the municipality, and then you can make adjustments and resubmit. In Phoenix, you're waiting 9 months. You just are, or like almost. I shouldn't say this, but minimum 9 months. Minimum 9 months at $100,000. That's what you're going to be looking at for rezoning. In these smaller suburbs outside of Houston, outside of Dallas, outside of San Antonio, you're not waiting that long. It's 3 to 6 months maximum. Okay. If Phoenix is 9 months minimum, these are 3 to 6 months maximum. I don't know why that is. I think each municipality differs, but you're totally right. Houston's a little slow. Houston's massive. Houston's got department after department after department, and one department's got to ask another department. This guy's new. We're not sure. Let's have a hearing. Oh, we're booked 4 months out in hearings. We just don't have room. And in other cases, it's kind of pushed us down a route of, well, why do we have to necessarily rezone these right now? Why can't we have an extended stay asset, which is a hospitality asset that we can rezone later? And who's to say we can't lease these units out on long-term 30-month leases in a commercial asset, in a commercial product? So our attorneys are like, well, yeah, you're totally right, but here's some things you need to watch out for. Your insurance needs to be solid. You need to have some variability in there and some flexibility, but there's so many facets to it that's kind of pushed us down the route of make it simple, make it clean, make it easy, and then maybe show up at the party later on and say, hey, by the way, we have this property. Oh yeah, we're already doing what we want to do. We already have some leases here. Why don't we just make it official? In the city, we haven't seen any particular penalty for doing that. Cities don't really penalize you for having a long-term lease in a motel or hotel. In fact, there's a lot of hotels that operate that way right now. And they do long-term leases with corporations, very similar to a residential lease agreement, if you could believe it. So.
Andrew, how do you have a strategy in trying to identify the ideal property that you're using? Are these on-market deals, off-market, a combination of both? What are you doing to find them?
Yeah, we use a lot of software. We just had a meeting with Joe Williams. He's one of the founders of Keller Williams. And he brought on some of his biggest brokers in Texas. He's based out of Austin. So he says, here, we'll put you in touch with the biggest brokers that we have in the commercial division to build a lead pipeline. Obviously, you're using Keller Williams anyway to represent the seller, so it doesn't. We don't care. A lot of referrals, a lot of broker relationships. I don't like to give people parameters of what I'm looking for. I really hate doing that, and it was a big mistake I made in the beginning of this, saying I'm only looking for this. This is my buy box. Well, I find out that all these properties are slipping through my fingers. Well, what's going on? Well, you don't buy that. I thought you bought 1985, though this is like a 1978 build. And I'm like, well, that would have worked. So I say, send me any hospitality asset you possibly can. Send it to our acquisitions team, and we'll underwrite it. We'll look at it. We do it very quickly. We can do that using a couple different tools like CoStar, which is like the commercial version of MLS, and then Crexy. So that's how we do it.
I'm curious, have you spent any time or focused at all in opportunity zone investment type properties where there's the certain tax advantages to doing that, which I know are slowly running out over time, but I would imagine on occasion you might run into them that sit within an opportunity zone.
We still have a few years. Yeah. It's funny. That question comes up a lot in our investor meetings, a lot. We were even going to build an OZ zone fund specifically for those. We had one investor kind of shy us away from that, saying, hey, you're kind of limiting your opportunity to buy, really any distressed hospitality asset. I mean, it's icing on the cake. If you can find it in an opportunity zone, it's going to be great. And it'll be a lot easier to raise money that way too. A lot easier. But as you can probably guess, a lot of those opportunities are bought up really quickly. There's a lot of New York hedge funds that just pick up these properties. They could care less. They don't even do hospitality. They're just like, okay, opportunity zone. Oh, there's a retail strip mall, there's a gas station, and there's a hotel. Let's buy it all. So we'd be buying it from them. But yeah, great question.
So let's get into the construction process. We've kind of talked through acquiring the property. Is the money needed for the construction part of your initial raise, or is that done separately after the fact?
Yeah, it is. So we have bought properties in the past that we slowly raise for it after we have the acquisition funds. We would never do that, by the way, unless we thought that the property was sustainable or wasn't sustainable. It's got to be sustainable in and of itself, as is. If the property is a shell, which there are shells out there, for sale, or that sellers want to sell, we would need to raise all the capital for the renovation project.
So in terms of thinking about construction, what does a typical unit that you're really shooting for, kind of the end goal, the end game, what that's going to look like? What's that look like in size, number of bedrooms? You mentioned kitchen.
Yeah, sure. So and I guess I'll ask everyone to kind of close their eyes and just think in their mind's eye what a motel room looks like. That's usually the best technique. But when you walk into a motel room, you typically pass by a door that goes into the bathroom, or the bathroom's in the back of the motel room, but typically it's close to the front door. Okay. Once you pass the bathroom, you walk straight into the bed area. Typically on your right or on your left is the bed, and on the opposite side is a dresser with the TV on it. You keep going, and then you have the window that looks out. These are typically 300 square feet. These will be studios. We don't combine units. When you combine units, you lose cash flow, you lose revenue. We do combine units if the deal works and the numbers work, and we can lose some, and the property value, the highest and greatest use would be to have a healthy mix of 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and studios. But for the most part, we like to keep them as is. These units are equipped with 20 amps most of the time, not a lot of power. So you have to think about the electrical schematic that we have to rebuild from scratch on an AutoCAD, as it were. Get our engineers involved to add more amps. And we need 60 to 80 amps per unit. That's a lot more power. So we're opening up walls. In some instances, we do have a little more power with newer builds, like 90s builds. Like if you take an extended stay America, those have more power. And for the most part, we wouldn't have to do a whole lot. But we're adding plumbing to the units that don't have kitchens, and electrical for GFI outlets, for garbage disposals, for an extra plug for the fridge. We try to buy really low, high efficiency, low amperage appliances. But once we're done, it's a studio apartment.
So in terms of ratio, you're doing everything in your power to keep a 1-to-1. So 1 hotel room to 1 multifamily usable rentable space, correct?
That's correct. We want to keep it as we want to keep as many units as we possibly can. So if I have 2 units side by side in a hotel, one, they both could yield, $900 a month. And I combine them and I can actually get $1,300 a month. I'm not doing myself any favors.
So then some of these
So will you put in, oh,
go ahead, Sean.
go ahead, Andy. No.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
do some of these properties, so they're going to vary just like a motel would. You might have some, where a motel, for instance, has 2 queen beds and it's, they've charged more for it. It's a bigger room. You're just going to get a larger studio. Are there any circumstances where you're able to kind of fit a bedroom into these, where you just kind of wait to see what the property provides you?
On one project that we were doing in Texas, we were going to do that. We did notice there was an opportunity to potentially put up a wall. Found out that the code wouldn't allow us to do so. You need a certain amount of feet in clearance. You need 12 feet clearance minimum on all sides. So one wall could be 14 feet. One wall can be 12 feet. But you have to have 12 feet clearance to add a wall. In Arizona, I don't think that's a standard. But Arizona, you would have to have an ingress egress door and window. So you'd have to have a door and a window for fire, just for fire. And then you would need to put fire sprinkler in that bedroom, as well as another head outside. And I can't tell you how expensive that is. It'll blow your mind how expensive fire suppression systems are. So now you got a fire head inside the bedroom just because you put up a dumb wall with the door. And now you got one inside the main living area. And the window has to be an ingress, egress, and it has to be a certain size, suitable for escape, if there was a fire. So, you got a lot of other problems or a lot of other rules that come out of the woodwork when you decide to put a room in there. Now, would that bedroom, this is our big debate. This is the big debate from our company. Would that bedroom, on a tax parcel assessor perspective, give us more value? Because we could say we have a 1 bedroom, 1 bath. The answer is yes, it would. So is it worth it? That's the question. Is the risk is not so much there. It's more the cost. Is the cost worth it to build a 1 bed, 1 bath? Well, we're historically putting in $25,000 to $45,000 into each unit. And that includes FF&E, fixtures, furnishings, so on and so forth. Majority of the work is really the guts, the MEP, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing. Once submitted to the MEP engineer and he gives us back the schematic, we're out probably $150K. Now we have to get to work and tear it down, demo it, pull permits, add the right electrical, the drainage, plumbing, get inspections done. If we could skip all that, and just add a wall somewhere and make it a bedroom, that'd be great. But unfortunately, we're not, I have not seen an opportunity show itself that it would be that easy yet. Not saying there isn't. I'm sure there is out there, but not yet.
So are these units furnished?
Yes.
So you're renting furnished units.
Yeah, and that's what makes us a little unique. We're a little bit different in that respect. So there's operators out there that do what we do. We're niche. We're not novel. There's a lot of people that actually do what we do. I know it doesn't sound like there might be, but you dig deeper, you'll find a lot of conversion operators out there. They don't furnish. In fact, I think the majority don't furnish at all. My unique history with short-term rental management has allowed us to furnish these, collect a premium on the furnished rent, because everyone knows that furnished rentals definitely earn more. It kind of changes your demographic a bit. You might have some traveling corporate professionals that maybe don't need to stay 6 months or 12 months, right? But you're still going to get the people that want to be local to the area that would like a furnished rental. Having a furnished rental is almost like a supply chain logistics nightmare. Like you have to know, where your backup bed frames are going to be, how to fix something that broke, backup sheets, where you store them, when you need to order more. It could be a nuisance.
Now, will these? Sorry, Andy. I don't know.
All right, go for it. You just got a delay. You're all right. Go for it.
Oh, okay. Will these units have like washer and dryer dryers in the units, or is there like a facility you put on site?
It depends on the project. That's a great question. So on a 29 unit that we're doing in McAllen, we did go down the route of putting in washers and dryers, and that's a funny story. I went to the electric engineer. I told him, hey, we need 220 volt into each unit, and he's like, you don't have enough power. I said, do it anyway. We submitted to the city. The city said, you don't have enough power. So everyone's telling me you don't have enough power, Andrew. It's numbers. This is really easy. Okay. And so I said, okay, what's it going to take to get enough power? They said, well, you got to increase the switchgear. Okay, what's that cost? They said, well, it's $40,000 to increase the switchgear, but that's not your problem. The problem is you're about 9 months out, 10 months out to wait for one to arrive. They're on back order. Everybody wants one. Everybody's increasing their volume, electrical volume on their properties. So I said, okay, what if we just did gas washers and dryers instead? And so they said, yeah, that's no load on your electrical, it's gas. So we did that instead. We ran gas all the way through the property. We solved that problem. For other properties, no, we're not putting in a washer dryer. It's just not feasible. The numbers don't make sense at all. What we'll do is we'll have an existing facility with washer dryers already there, and we'll just add more to it.
So are you making big changes to the metering? How do you work through that?
Yeah, it would be a dream to sub-meter all the units, like apartments do, but we don't. We don't do that. We've been successfully converting these or rezoning these assets into multifamily under the understanding that these units will never be sub-metered as long as we own them. So historic properties, if you're familiar with kind of like historic duplexes or triplexes, they have, one water meter or one electric meter. Nowadays, when you do a new build, they actually wouldn't allow that. Especially if you have multi-habitation build outs, they're going to say, okay, you need to have a meter for this one. You need to have a meter for this one. That's code, but they allow it today. And that's sometimes one of the variances that we have to apply for. Sometimes some municipalities say, well, we want each of these to be sub-metered. That could be over $2 million just to get that done. It wildly unaffordable. So for the most part, they let us go and say, okay, cool. We'll let you have the multifamily zoning and you can have 1 meter.
So is say electricity, is that just built into the rent, and you don't like send out a separate prorated charge for electric every month, and it's just like, hey, you basically pay us X amount of dollars a month for rent and we provide your power? Is that how it works, or
right.
Are you trying to figure out and send out separate billings for that?
Right. We call it RUBS, which funny enough on this podcast, I can't tell you what that stands for. I know it stands for something, but it's utilities. It's something utilities chargeback. Anyways, we charge back utilities, and it's usually around $250 to $300. That includes sewer, water, trash, electric, internet. And that's a fee that everybody pays. We build that number based on previous utility reports or utility statements. And we take a look at the total kilowatt hours that were used, the total water columns that were used, and what the occupancy was at the time. And with some basic math and an Excel spreadsheet, we can kind of calculate what it would be if everybody was living there and maybe full time. You have to understand, people are now living here. They're not staying here. And there's a big difference. And that's actually one of the biggest hangups of the city. The city's like, hold on, people are now living here. And the city almost wants to argue that point to make sure that we do certain things that cost us more money. Our rebuttal to the city is, well, people are already living there. Okay, so nothing's really going to change, except we're going to make it more habitable for them. And anyways, it's just kind of a dance with municipalities. But
so what happens with the old motel pool? Is it like buying a home? You got to keep the pool. It's a great sales point. Do they expect it, or does that sucker go?
So it depends on where you're at. Here in Texas, people love pools. Okay, residents love pools. If it's salvageable, we keep it. If it's not salvageable, there's no reason. It's cheaper to fill it in, which funny enough requires a permit, if you could believe it. Like you got to do it right. You can't just collapse plumbing lines and without having a proper permit pulled, renovation permit for it. But if it's shot and it ain't coming back, or the cost of digging up an old ABS 3-inch pipe is just too much and replacing it and replastering and everything else, we'll just fill it in. There's so many things you can do though instead of a pool. You could put up a dog park, you could put up turf, you could put up a gazebo. You can put a really nice commercial gazebo, with a grill, built-in grill, benches, seating. There's a lot of different alternative amenities that you can add other than a pool. Pools are nice though. You can even do a hot tub, above ground hot tub, if that's something that you want to build out with a deck. There's a lot of creative ways to add amenities.
Now, I would imagine given some of the differences in typical multifamily that might be unique to this, the management of it might be, unconventional potentially. Do you guys use set it up to use a specialized management company, leasing team to handle this?
Yeah, great question. So it's our own team. We built it in-house, and it's that mix of long-term and short-term. It's long-term focus, and if we have availability or if we've set aside units to be a short-term available, then we will. Different systems, different software. We use Appfolio for our long-term rental residents. And Appfolio is great. It's got a login, it's got a tenant portal, it's got a landlord portal, in our case, a management portal. With the short-term, we use a conglomeration of my old team, or standard operating procedures that we've known are tried and true, and they work really well. And then the people on site. Typically, we have 2 to 3 individuals for the larger buildings. For the smaller buildings, it might be 1 to 2. It's not a whole lot of care because we're proactive on in the software. We have notifications to our managers. Hey, there's a total turnaround that needs to happen in room 13, or laundry needs to be returned back to room 4, and the place needs to be set up. Checklists when cleaners have cleaned or turned over a room. So on and so forth. Anything that you might see in a regular hotel or motel, we do the same thing. On a very small level, though. Most of this is long-term apartments.
Yeah, so do you provide like a range of leasing options? Because it sounds like some of this could easily fit within a short-term rental space, while at the same time also easily fitting within a long-term rental space. Do you provide those options?
Totally. So we have an ADR, an average daily rate, if someone's going to come in and stay, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, which is based on an algorithm of what other hotels and motels are leasing the daily rate out, which is a data aggregator. And then we have your 6-month and 12-month option. We do have a month-to-month option, but it's very expensive. So most people, they usually, if they're going to stay a week or 2, they will. If they want to make it official, they're going to pay for a 6-month lease.
I would imagine also, given that it's furnished and a lot of other factors, there's a certain type of tenant that is going to be really attracted to this kind of property. What do you do to identify and market to those tenants?
It's funny how variable they are. You'd think that they were just one type of tenant and that's who it is across the board, but it really depends on the location as well. It's the beauty of real estate. The more variables, the more opportunities, right? So I think, in one building, we have locals that work at retail shops, and they might be couples with a child, one child, or singles. It just might be a woman or a man, and these people are just live in their one unit and they're fine. We're seeing a lot of seniors. Okay. A lot of seniors show up to the party, and they love that, it's a quiet place. They're not bothered. It's furnished. They don't have to worry about, having to move in stuff, pulling in the U-Haul truck, but they still have their independence. They don't want to be sent to an assisted living home yet. So, they're there. It is a pretty wide range. I've tried to pinpoint what our demographic might be. I would say the majority are between the ages of 25 to 40. Okay. And they're usually singles and couples. And then there's this growing group of seniors that, kind of look at the economy, look at inflation. They don't have anywhere to go. They're selling their homes, or they're going to the next place. They don't know where to be. Baby boomer generations kind of winding down, and they're just like, well, I'll just stay here. This is a nice, beautiful furnished apartment, and it's reasonable.
I could see a scenario where you get tenants in that kind of situation. I could see myself doing this, where I've decided I'm going to go slim when it comes to buying all this personal property couches. I'm going to go into a fully furnished. And if I like the experience, but I need to move, I can see a situation where, I want to find that same project maybe just down the street if I've got to go there. Andrew, what are you offering down there? Kind of to stick with that kind of experience. I think if a good experience is provided, I would think you'd get a lot of loyalty there.
Yeah, that's a big focus of ours, is making sure that they're taken care of. We're very tech centered, so you get some people that don't know how to send a text message, or they just want to call, and that's fine. We'll pick up the phone and we'll talk. But we're very, quick, easy, fast answers, and it's a human. It's not AI. We're available. We're ready. You need a place right now for a month. Great, you're going to pay a premium for it. But you need a place for 6 months. Here you go. Here's a lease agreement. Here's some opportunities. Here's some studios that you could stay in. If you want to check them out, you could check them out. Someone will be there at the site to show you around. We get a lot of people that are short term. They don't want a 2-year lease. We don't offer a 2-year lease. I'm wondering if they would actually bite if we offered a 2-year lease. Might be something to think about. But in our name of the game in private equity, it's high occupancy with predictable yields. That's what we love. Okay. We don't want to hit the home. We're not looking for those home run. Wow, they just paid $200 for tonight. We like that high occupancy, predictable yields. So that might be something to think about.
Yeah. You mentioned
how often.
Go ahead. You mentioned that the
how long.
So yeah, I'll go ahead and finish this. You mentioned earlier, you indicated that you fill these up pretty quick from kind of issuance of C of O. What kind of time frame are you realistically looking for and usually hoping for to have high occupancy?
Yeah, it depends on the size of the property. On our 80 unit, we calculated in our pro forma to be full after 4 months of a total lease up, which is conservative. It shouldn't take that long, but we put 4 months in there. So for every 20 units, it's about 30 days that we figure that it's going to take to lease up. And we have promotions and lease up specials, and first month half off, and free utilities for the first 2 months. And there's a lot of different unique and creative ways to get people in. Those are actually built into our pro forma, just this nasty spreadsheet. And I can't remember what line item we call them. I'm not the numbers guy. Jacob's the numbers guy. But they're basically expenses geared towards marketing the unit, which we've had allocated from day one. So we know how much our budget will be, whether that goes to ads or promotions or discounts or whatever it is. We know what our spending power would be.
Sean, you want to take a crack at it? I know you had a question.
You asked the same question I was going to ask.
Got it. Well, Andrew, really informative, wild stuff. We really appreciate you taking the time to walk us through it and go through this really cool model. Excited to see kind of how this expands into the future. Tell our listeners how they can connect with you.
Just reach out to us online. Go to motels2apartments.com. Just like it sounds, it's motels, it's plural, to, it's TO, apartments.com. And you can book a time to chat with us there. You can also send me an email directly if you want to, andrew@motels2apartments.com.
All right. Andrew LeBaron, motels2apartments.com. Thanks so much. Let's do it again sometime.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you. With that, everybody, that is our show.
Thanks,
Make
Andrew.
sure to be with us later this afternoon for the Creative Finance Collective at 2:00 Arizona time. We'll see you next week.
Have a good day, everyone.